Daredevil himself, Charlie Cox!
What's up, guys?
How you doing, dude?
I'm really good. I just saw about an hour and a half of the parade, so it was
Yeah.
awesome. Any of you guys see that? Yes. Any of you guys in it? No, you're all here, right?
I was in it. I was rushing from it. I was actually working the street, so I had to get back here quick for you. Thank you so much for what you contributed to the superhero world. Okay, we could say Marvel Universe if you want, but all of us in general, we are happy that we've had a palatable interpretation of Daredevil. And we appreciate that a lot. Okay, before we go ahead and open up the floor for questions, I'd like to ask a few questions here. In terms of the interview process that you went through in order to obtain your role as Daredevil, one thing is, how did that go? And the second thing is, oh, thank you for the water bottle.
No worries.
So nice, what the hell? And second, do you know who or how many other individuals were up for your role?
Well, it ended up going well. It was a pretty grueling process, really. Many of you guys may know this because I've spoken about it before, but the first audition that I had, the sides that I was given to read from didn't mention Daredevil, and I was not familiar with the character, and so in the body of the email it said, we think this is for a TV show based on the character Daredevil, and then there were these other sides, and I read from them, but I didn't do my research. I didn't have time, so I didn't play the character blind. So when they invited me back, they said to my agents, they said, we think he's great, he's kind of right for the role. The character's blind, right? So made some, and then then it went on for a few months. I had 3 or 4 different recalls and screen tests with various actors. There was some other Daredevils, there was some other Foggies, there was some other Karens, and we, so much of that first season, and so much of the show is about what we call the Scooby Gang, the Foggy, Karen, and Matt, and so that triangle was so important to get right, and so we had to screen test with each other. But ironically, in the end, I never read with Eldon, and I never read with Deborah. So somehow I think what happened is that when they got those 2 guys, they were like, they'll be great.
Yeah, it's incredible how we're literally seeing realistic superheroes on the screen right now. And, the gruff world of crime, and not the excuse my French, guys, but the cartoony world of crime. And you bring a level of realistic impression on, in fact, that there actually was a Daredevil out on the street, how plausible it actually could be. So thank you so much for that, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the questioning unless you have any final thoughts before we do that.
No, I would just say that, I really appreciate that, and that's of course all down to the folks at Marvel and Netflix and the showrunners. First season Stephen DeKnight, and the second season Marco Ramirez and Doug Petrie. The thing I'll say though is that our show is it's very similar to a lot of the comics. It's very similar in tone to the Bendis Malieve stuff, and a lot of Frank Miller stuff, and some of Jeff Loeb's stuff himself. But there are also wonderful runs, there are wonderful issues, there are wonderful Daredevils that are more lighthearted and kind of to use your expression, cartoony. Like, I don't think Stiltman would fit in our world very well.
Yeah.
But he's a great Daredevil, character. So
yeah,
it's one interpretation.
Okay, I know you guys are dying to talk to this man, but let me preface this in all seriousness. Okay, let's try not to make jokes if we can, because of any disabilities. It's kind of rude and not very funny. Okay, and the other thing is, let's try not to say I have a 2-part question. Okay, let's have one question because the person behind you is giving you all kind of death signs. So let's make it one question and brief if you can. So I apologize if I took up some questions already. So Beth, where are you? Oh, hey, dear. First, right here.
Very first question, and he told me to have the mic.
That's okay. We can hear you from here. So, and we'll repeat the question.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Sorry. Good morning. So Daredevil kind of micromanages the hell out of 12 blocks, but how would you feel if he were to move into the bigger Marvel world, especially something like Marvel Red Team?
Are you familiar with Marvel Red Team?
I'm not very familiar with Marvel Red Team, so I can't.
Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Deadpool kick ass.
So the people who dress in red.
In red.
In red.
Who'd have thought?
I see how we did that. Yeah, you know, like one of the things I love about what they've done with these shows, and I mean the Daredevil show and Jessica Jones and what we've got coming with Luke Cage and Iron Fist, is I love in particular Rosario Dawson's character Claire Temple, and I love how she's I mean like a Hollywood icon, and she's wonderful in the role, and she. You know, the way they pepper her throughout all of the shows. She's almost like, at the moment, she's kind of the through line that connects all our shows. And I love all that stuff. Whenever there's a little, we did a scene, one of my favorite scenes, one of my favorite moments in season 2 was I had a scene with Rosario, and our characters hadn't seen each other for a while in the series. And she had a cut on her face, not a real one, a makeup cut. And so I said to her, like, what's that like? Is that just a bit of texture? Why have we got that there? And apparently the reason that she was given, that she told me, was that in Luke Cage show, a few days before, something had happened to her and she had a cut on her face. But that had to be consistent with our show because of the timeline. And I just think that stuff's so cool. I love it. You know, I mean, most people probably would never pick up on it, but you know, if you are paying real attention, that's really I love all that stuff. So any of the crossovers, you know, I already mentioned Stiltman, but of course, every time that Matt goes to Melvin Potter's, you can see in the background the stilts. Maybe some of you guys haven't seen that, but I always like that. But, you know, my favorite days on set are in Melvin Potter's workshop because you know there's so much stuff to play with.
Yeah. Hey, I have a stupid question. Who has not seen season 2 yet? Okay, we can talk about it because I only see one hand.
You were very enthusiastic to raise your hand there.
Yes, you was.
You are not ashamed of that in this room.
Like she was going to get something. No, there's no prize for that. You can get Netflix on your phone, by the way. So, see you Monday. Whatever. Okay, anyway. Okay, so if there are any spoilers that is discussed here, I think we're kind of all free. And if there's anything that, Charlie, you want to tell us that we don't know?
You guys know I don't know anything. How many years have you come to these conventions? If
Charlie,
it's Marvel's
they're not novices.
We know nothing.
Take a general collection amongst everyone in the room, and then we'll put it up here. Okay, next question. Where are you? Hello.
Hello. I thought you were wonderful as Lorenzo in Merchant of Venice with Al Pacino.
Where are you?
And I would like to hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would like to hear you talk about that, your approach to the role, or any stories from set.
Thank you so much. That was. I spoke a little bit about this yesterday, so I don't know. I don't know if any of you guys were in the panel yesterday. But...
Who was in the panel yesterday? Raise your hand. There's a
I
lot.
don't want to bore those guys. You know, the story that I told, which is a very brief version of it, was I was taken out of drama school. I was about to do a play. I was about to do a version of the Nativity play, playing a shepherd in a small tour of the West Country in the UK, and I got a phone call and I was on set with Al Pacino, and that was like just a mind-blowing experience, and something that I'll obviously never forget. And to be the nice thing about doing a Shakespeare film early on in your career is I think that people think people, as an actor, respect you a little bit more going forward because they think like you're the real deal because you're in a Shakespeare film. And I had, like I was a kid, I was still figuring everything out and learning how to speak verse. But it was, it was an amazing opportunity, and to, I mean, Al Pacino, obviously, Al Pacino, De Niro, those guys have been my idols. So to be on set with him was pretty cool. I got one story for you. There's a guy in the film who plays a character named Solario, a lovely actor called John Sessions, and he, in the UK, had a television show, and he was famous for doing impressions of Hollywood stars. And one of the impressions he would do was Al Pacino. Oh, yeah. But we didn't know whether Al knew that he did an impression of him. And so, he didn't want to, but he didn't want to do it, and he was really worried that Al would be offended if he found out, so he was kind of quite nervous about that. But after we'd go out for dinner or whatever at night, we'd go, we'd all have a drink in the bar or whatever, and he would do his impressions, and he would do like conversations between Al Pacino and De Niro, and Jack Nicholson would come into the room, you know what I mean, and we'd all laugh. Anyway, there was so he was doing it all the time, just not in front of Al. And then there was one night when we were leaving a restaurant, we'd all been out, the whole cast had been out, and John came up behind me and said, in his Al Pacino voice, which I can't do, but he was like, "John, you coming for coffee?" Whatever. And I turned around and went, "Fuck off, John." And it was Al.
Yeah, I think Al is pretty privy to a lot of people that impersonate him. Like he has a thick skin. Anyway, I can't do it. Where are you, Beth? Hello.
Hey there. So all I really like to do is eat and watch Netflix. So
Honesty.
It's important for me for the actors to be really cool from the shows that I love and stuff. And I had the opportunity to meet you yesterday at the photo op, and I was extremely glad to see that you were kind and respectful to your fans. So I appreciate that. But my question is, so DragonCon is a place for fans to go to be fanatic about something. Is there a specific show that you're fanatic about?
Good question.
Oh yeah, really good question.
Who do you watch? TV more or movies more?
I think I probably watch movies more, although that's changing. As TV's changing, it's changing. That's a really good question. I mean, I really got into Fargo, the TV show. Because I'm obviously a huge fan of the Coen Brothers, and so the film is one of my favorites. So when I heard they were making the show, I was immediately negative about it. I was like, oh, come on, it's going to be bad. But it was, I really thought the show was fantastic. I really enjoyed watching that. I like Stranger Things recently. There's a couple of guys out there who've got the light bulbs on. So I took a picture of one of the guys and I sent it to the folks at Netflix.
Someone I know is on the second episode, and we went through Marriott yesterday, and those folks had the light bulb. Yeah. She was asking me. She said, now I didn't understand what she was talking about. She said, why they're wearing lights and they got alphabets underneath them? And I'm sitting here going, what the hell is she talking? Oh, you saw that? I know what it means. So yeah. So Stranger Things are on.
Yeah. I know that I've kind of only mentioned 2 Netflix shows, but
nothing on network. Do you watch?
Oh, actually, no. Fargo's on Hulu.
Yeah, it's on A&E, is it? The Fox. FX. Yeah.
Something else.
Any superhero shows? You watch anything on the CW?
Yeah. I've caught a few episodes of Arrow and Flash. I love all that stuff. That's been really fun. I love Jessica Jones. I'm really excited about Luke Cage.
I'm excited.
I think Luke Cage could be like a really a show that people remember for decades. I think it's going to be really culturally interesting, and some really cool music I hear in that show.
Yeah, so, that's cool.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for that group question. If you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, let's go on that side of the room. Where are you?
Hi. So season 1, as y'all were talking about, is relatively grounded, or as grounded as a superhero show can be. And season 2 introduced a lot more mystical elements like the Hand and Black Sky, and I was wondering how that affected Matt's worldview in season 2 and onward.
Yeah, really good question. That was tricky, I didn't obviously I don't know what they're writing, and I didn't see that coming. but just because the season 1 was so grounded in reality, and you know, I kind of at the time I kind of had mixed feelings about it. I wasn't sure because you know, I loved that the first season was really basically it was a crime drama, and then it had the superhero element was just kind of peppered on top. But the show didn't survive because it had a superhero in it. It survived based on the quality of the story and the writing and the characters, and so the superhero element was a bonus, right?
Yes.
And I was really admired what the creators had done with that. So going into season 2, I understand the need to do it because we're gearing up towards the Defenders, and Iron Fist is going to be in the Defenders, and you know, Iron Fist's world has a lot of mythology in it, so you have to kind of tie in those worlds early on. And so Daredevil season 2, I think, was a really good opportunity to do that. You know, over the past few years now, I've read a lot of Daredevil comics, and you know, some of my favorite issues were with the Hand, you know, and you know, when they introduced the mythical element to the show. So part of me kind of ended up feeling like if you're going to make Daredevil, you're going to make it as true as you can to the comics, and then you got to have that, you know. And I feel like what they did it's dangerous territory, but because you don't want to take people out of the reality and then lose all the stakes. But I think you know, I mean, obviously I would say this, but I think that the writers achieved it really, really well. You know, they kept it very. You know, they introduced it in a really kind of sophisticated way, and it kind of had, you know, it felt like at times, you know, we were filming the film Seven, you know, like it was really dark. Anyway, we'll see going forward. I don't know.
Well, it's good, and I agree with you on the sophistication, because I think the first time that we saw superheroes on the screen in more of a realistic way, the first thing they did was basically change their costumes, i.e. X-Men. You know, instead of them having the tights, much like, you know, Daredevil had the unitard in the comics, they literally ended up with leather, you know, outfits that is pretty much realistic than somebody running around the street with tights on. And your costume, which obviously evolved from what you were wearing to the leather outfit or whatever, is a little bit more realistic than seeing you actually in the unitard. So.
Yeah, and it's fun that, you know, I really loved how they kind of tied that into the storyline. You know, the conversations that Matt had with Father Lantham in this first season, you know, kind of helped him come to terms with the idea that he was going to have a superhero costume.
Cool. Hey, we're on Beth, I think, right? The other side?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I had the pleasure to meet you yesterday. I'm Natasha.
Hi, Natasha.
My mom is actually a special needs teacher. She teaches really little guys, 3 and 4 year olds. My question has to do with a very specific scene when you were going to visit Fisk at the prison. You were handed, I guess it was the thing in Braille, and what I particularly loved about that scene was Matt ran his fingers over it, turned it over because it was upside down. I know that you touched on it a little bit yesterday at the other panel, but I wanted to see, you talked about it a lot with, I'm sorry, I'm keep going on. You talked about it a lot with how you trained. So what my question is, yes, to the end, in a question, how did you really get into the nitty-gritty, especially with the Braille, the extra little bits that make it so believable?
You know, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do remember that day, and I can't read Braille. Of all the things that I did try and kind of do, you know, learn in order to play the role, I thought Braille was one of the things I could probably get away with not doing. With the time constraints, you know. But I did learn how to read Braille, if that makes sense. So I can't actually read it, but I know how it is read. I know what the hand looks like. And it was fun coming up with a way for Matt to read Braille in front of Karen and in front of people who don't know that he's Daredevil. And then in the first season and also in the second season, there are little moments where you get to see Matt reading Braille by himself, which of course is a very different thing because of his you know, his superhuman touch. There is also a moment, I can't remember if it made on camera or not, but there is a moment where you get to see him read a regular newspaper. Because of course, you know, one of the things that Matt could do, I think even in the first ever issue, was he could read print, you know, because there was a slight indentation on the page, so you'd be able to read regular print. You know, I was put in touch early on with a really wonderful man called Joe Strecci, who's been legally blind for 20 years. And I spent a huge amount of time with the guy before we started filming, and he was on set a lot during the first season. And any questions that I had would be, you know, we walked around the streets together. I was blindfolded, and he had his cane, and you know, I joked that it was literally a case of the blind leading the blind. And you know, I filmed him a great deal, and you know, I had him, you know, do household chores, like make tea and food and walk around I basically had him clean my bum. I filmed him doing day-to-day stuff, you know, and I had long conversations with him, and I filmed his eyes the whole time, and just tried to, I don't know, just try to figure out what was going on and make it as realistic as possible. And then, of course, had to invent / go, you know, and learn from the comics how Matt operated when he was by himself, or when he's with someone who knows about him, which is, of course, a different thing. As far as I can remember with the piece of braille in that scene, was that as it was handed to me and I went to read it, I think he handed it to me upside down, and I only figured it out because the address was on the wrong side, was at the bottom of the page, so I turned it around. But I love that you picked that up, because that's the stuff that I love in movies as well. And, you know, those little details that you don't think about, that's really fun.
Exactly how much time did you take in learning how to be disabled and then applying it to the screen? Between that time, how much time did they allow you to actually?
Well, I got the job a month before we started shooting, so I mean, I started immediately, and then, you know, it's kind of been an ongoing process. You know, and then there's a scene at the very first episode of season 2 where Matt and Karen are playing pool. And so, you know, the first thing I did was call up Joe, and we got together, we had a game of pool, and you know, I just kind of, you know, figured that out.
Yeah, cool.
There's a trick shot in that scene. There's a trick shot in that scene. That was really hard. I had to practice a lot. Because it's one thing doing a trick shot, it's another thing doing a trick shot and not looking at the balls you're hitting.
Right,
you know?
right.
So that's fun.
Awesome. In one take?
I think I did get it in the first take, and then I was like, I can do it better. And then, like 8 takes later, we had to give up.
There you go. You did it right the first time. Okay, where are we? There you go. Hi.
Hi, I was wondering if there was anything with your character, or possibly his interactions with the other characters, that maybe you wanted to see, or that you sort of tried to suggest that they add in, that maybe you haven't gotten your way yet, or that you hope to see in future seasons, because obviously there will be many, many more seasons of Daredevil.
Characters that are already involved?
Or characters that haven't shown up yet.
Oh, okay, yeah, really great question. I mean, I have to be really careful here, because I preface this. There's no way I can answer this question without somehow it getting on the internet that this is what I've said is going to happen.
We'll give you 25.
So I really have to preface answering a question like this by saying I have no idea what's going to happen, and the writers do such an amazing job. So whatever they come up with, I think will be fantastic. Things that I'm obviously, the relationship between Matt and Karen has to. Where we go now, as you guys might remember, the end of, well, not you. Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah. Where you don't have to watch it now. Where we go. Everyone knows at the end of season 2. There's, Karen now has found out that Matt is Daredevil. Sorry, and so what that's going to do to their relationship and how they go forward is I'm really fascinated by. I really love. I haven't seen it because I find it hard to watch sometimes. But I really loved the Karen-Matt relationship, how it grew at the beginning of season 2. I really thought that was handled beautifully. And there's that scene with the raindrop. And this was all written, you know, it was written into the script. The raindrop comes down and he feels it and he moves it up her arm and stuff. I just thought it was really romantic and really beautiful. And so I'm really excited I hope that they can figure it out, you know. I don't really care if Matt and Foggy make it, you know, become friends again. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I only said that because so many people say to me, you gotta figure it out with Foggy. You know? and Eldon told me this really cool story where he was in Barnes & Noble and someone stopped him and was like, oh man, I love the show, you're awesome. And then he said, and then this guy was like, but why did you get so mad at Matt when you found out he was when you found out he was Daredevil? Why? Like, that's so cool, man. If you're his best friend, you should love that. Like, you were so annoyed at him. What's the deal, dude? And Eldon was like, I have to say I don't write it. And then again, I have no idea if this is possible. I would hate to, I really shouldn't say it because I don't want to jinx it, but I would love to see Vincent come back.
Yes.
I would really, really love to see some more stuff with Mr. Fisk.
I think we're in agreement there. I think Beth is you, right? Yeah.
Hi, so one of the best things about this show for me is the fight scenes. They're beautifully choreographed and they are gritty to the point where sometimes I end up watching them behind my hands, kind of peeking through my fingers, thinking, oh my God, oh my God. So I'm wondering, what scene have you watched that you found it difficult to watch after having filmed it?
After what?
So after you shot it, you know what it's going to kind of look like when it actually comes to the screen. Is there anything that you've had trouble watching or maybe even watched behind your hands?
In this show?
Yes.
Yes, with you personally.
Well, no, I know it's going to happen, so it's like... but I wasn't on set when they filmed the beheading of Fisk with Anatoly in the door. So I knew that was coming, and I was perhaps a little bit squeamish for that. This is completely random, but I saw this film, The Lobster, the other day. Did you guys see The Lobster? And I don't want to ruin it if anyone hasn't, but right at the end, it looks like something's going to happen, and I couldn't wait. I had to look. I was like, if what's about to happen, if what I think is about to happen is going to happen, I don't want to see that. Sorry, yeah.
Not even in the dailies, right?
Yeah. I can never watch I'm pretty good with violence and stuff, but I can't watch doctors. Operation.
Same here.
No.
Same here.
None of
Gore,
that.
you don't like blood.
Vital organs being removed from bodies is not my thing.
Yeah. Same here. I'm right there.
Except if they're eating them in The Walking Dead. That's different.
But here's something though. And I'm gonna kind of touch on her question a little bit more. If there were on-set accidents and you saw it in the daily, well, first, if there were on-set accidents, yes or no? And then if so, do you get squeamish when they run the daily and say, yeah, this is where I got hurt? And on this show, I don't think there have been any accidents.
Wow. The only accident I've ever had is I did this film Stardust, which some of you would see. And
got hurt trying to catch it.
Yeah, someone said to me yesterday, God, you look so different. I'm like, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, you're saying I look older, thanks. But it is a scene in the end, there's a moment where Michelle Pfeiffer's character magics a huge giant vase. How do you guys say it?
You said it right both times.
Hey, we say vase. We say vase, and it's a British film, so I'm going with vase.
There you go.
And it comes flying across the room, and basically we've been filming that scene, that went on for days and days and days, and we've been filming that scene, and they had 3 of these things, and it was made of this special material, which is, you touch it and it disintegrates.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And so they only had 3 of them, they wanted to get it right, they wanted it to be me. I love doing that stuff, so I was up for it. But we'd been filming for so many hours, and we were filming during the day, and then there was the second unit team were going in at night. So the set was being used 24 hours. Wow. And I guess the heating, they said to me, basically, all you gotta do is, we'll get the thing, it was on a pulley system, or say go, you come out from where you're hiding and it's going to hit you and disintegrate, and you're going to have to throw yourself like it's been really, like you've been hit really badly. But I guess the temperature in the room had changed, and in effect the structure of this thing had solidified.
Yeah.
and so I turned, you know, and got ready to throw myself, and this thing, it didn't even crack, and I got thrown across the room, and then on the daily, like I don't remember it. I remember getting hit, and then I remember getting hit again, and I couldn't figure out why I'd been hit twice. It felt like I'd been hit, and then someone had come up to me and been like, "You idiot," and hit me. And so we watched the dailies on it, and basically what had happened is the thing had knocked me and not broken. And then I kind of like was in daze, and I kind of got up a little bit, but then it had hit the camera, and then it had broken, and then a huge chunk of it had fallen off and hit me in the head. Yeah.
That's realism for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're over on this side. Hello.
Hello. Loved you in Stardust. Thank you for being in it.
Thanks.
Also, between something as whimsical and magical as that movie and your grittier role as Matt Murdock, would you like to play something that, I guess, whimsical again? And I guess in the category of superheroes, who would it be? Regardless of whether you were Daredevil and whoever's already taken into movies and shows.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a good question.
Iron Fist is taken.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a world that as Daredevil, the show, but also the guy, as Matt, as Daredevil, kind of gets more cocky and more. Do you guys use that word here?
Yeah. Arrogant. Yeah.
As that happens, and we began to introduce it. Me and the writers were talking a lot about it in the second season. We began to introduce it more. There's a little bit in the first season, but we tried to find more in the second season. But things got so bad in the second season, it was hard to do. And I think going forward, there is a world where Matt, there's more. His wry humor comes out more. You know, and I'm looking forward to experimenting with that. I think, because you know, one of the things I love about Matt in the comics is often he's very funny. You know, he's got a great sense of humor, and I think that we'll be able to see more of that. I hope that's something we can do. I don't really want to comment on any other characters I'd like to play because I'm really happy with the character that I got.
Yeah, we are too.
I wouldn't exchange him for anyone, but in terms of playing different roles, as an actor, that's the dream, right? Is playing people who are completely different, going from one thing to the next, and having to embody a completely different spirit and a completely different energy, and finding different ways of speaking and walking. I've been really lucky. I've got to do a lot of accents, and accents are really fun because they really change. If you change your accent, you change the way you speak to people. You know, it's not just the word. It's not just, you know, the words you say or the accent in which you say them, the intonation. It's also how you address people. You know, my girlfriend doesn't like living with Matt Murdock because he's so blunt. You know, he just says exactly what he thinks. And
do you do any other accents other than?
I mean, I have to train. You have to, when you get an accent, you have to train. I was on that show, Boardwalk Empire, for a couple of years, and thanks.
There you go.
11 people watched that. And I had to play a Northern Irish guy, and that's a tricky accent to do, but it was really, really fun. But the interesting story about that is I went to Northern Ireland, I spent a lot of time, and I really got the accent really down. And then I got on set, no way. And he said, do it. And I got on set, it's been too long. Yeah, I got on set, and I did the first take of the first scene, and all the producers were looking at me like this. And I was like, what's going on? They said, that doesn't even sound like English. And so I had to like tone it down a great deal so people could understand it. You know, they were like, and they were like, we're gonna have to subtitle him.
Now, I think it's more fascinating to hear Brits, you know, imitate our accents. I mean, typically we don't know an actor on TV is British until they show up at conventions or hear interviews, and then we say, "What the hell?" you know. But you know, we get a lot of actors, British actors, foreign actors who can interpret our accents very well. But vice versa, it's usually more difficult. I can never do a British accent.
Well, it's very, we're lucky, the Brits and the Australians and other, other English-speaking nations around the world. We're very lucky because we grow up with American television. We grow up with American films. So we get the opportunity to, we're subconsciously, we're taking it in from a very, very early age. I mean, now maybe there'll be a generation of actors who can do very posh English accents because they've been watching Downton Abbey non-stop. But with that, I think that's one of the things that we have that you guys don't. Is that, I mean, I don't think there's as much great American TV and film, English TV and film as there is American. So.
Well, we practice from Doctor Who, and I think. Where are we on this side? Who are we, Beth? Okay.
Hi, you obviously do different portrayals between Matthew Murdock and Daredevil physically, but you seem to also make those choices in your speech patterns and just the personality in general. Can you talk some about how you made different choices between portraying Matthew Murdock, attorney, and Daredevil when it comes to their personality?
Yeah, really good question as well. So initially, we talked about Daredevil before he was even really Daredevil. Matt in the black vigilante, the vigilante Daredevil. We liked the idea that he had, all kind of alcoholic tendencies. Not with drinking, but in terms of he'd put on that suit, and his intentions were good. But something would happen when he put that suit on, and he'd get wrapped up in what he was doing, and he'd find there's a little bit of a sinister side to him that really enjoys the violence, enjoys the because it's on bad guys only. And so it was almost like he knew he was going to go out and he was going to make a difference. He knew he was going to bring some bad guys down, but he couldn't guarantee what time he was going to get home or how long he'd be out. He'd have that first drink and all bets were off, right? In terms of his speech patterns, for so much of the first season and the second season, he's trying, he's trying to hide who he is. He doesn't want to be recognized. And so the way he was written, and this wasn't me, this was in the writing, he was written in short, sharp sentences. He would say things like, "Give me a name, where's the guy? Who are you?" Like 3 or 4 words at a time. And all of them kind of, interrogating kind of sentences, aggressive interrogating sentences. And I didn't really try and do it any differently. There's only really one way that that kind of acting can come out of you. But the problem was that, a lot of early on, the producers would say to me, "You're starting to sound like Batman." And I was like, and I really wasn't attempting to do that. But I understand how easy it is to do that, because it's very hard to say things like "give me a name" in a threatening, aggressive fashion as a normal, in a normal voice. It didn't sound right to me. It sounded, if you threaten someone, you want to be like, "Give me a name," So that was constantly a battle I was having, was to try and make it, Matt, try and make it sound like Matt, but also do the job within the scene, which is to force the person that you're holding by the collar to tell you what you want to know.
Yeah. It's like police officers saying, "Hey, can you give me a name, please?" As opposed to a vigilante, you want to try.
But also, when you're holding someone up like that, all your muscles in your body are tensing, and so it does something to your voice.
Adrenaline kicks in, and you sound like Batman. Yeah. This side. Who do we have? Hello. There you are.
Hi. What was your favorite part about working with the other cast members?
Oh man. Yeah. They're all so great. I mean, they really are, and I just think that I would hate to leave anyone out. But
upcoming cast members as well.
Well, I don't know anything about that. So.
I tried.
God, that's really tricky. What I'll do is I can pick certain scenes that I love doing, because I don't feel like I'd be leaving anyone out. But the scene with John Bernthal in the graveyard, where he describes what happened to his family, you know, that was really, really, really special. And when we were filming, like, that was episode 4 of season 2, and when we were filming episode 6, one of the producers came up to me and said, "You're amazing in that scene." And I was like, I don't really speak in that scene. Like, that scene's about him. And you know what I mean? And so they said, no, but like there's a moment where he's describing his like one of his family, and like there's a tear that comes out of the mask, and it's so beautiful. And I was thinking, I don't remember crying in that scene. That's weird. I think I remember that. You know what I mean? Anyway, when I watched it, I remembered at the beginning of the scene, I have to carry him. I'm literally carrying him up the hill. And so that's sweat, you know? But I'm like, I'll take it, you know? That's a free tear. You know? Anyone who's ever acted knows sometimes it's really hard to cry on cue, you know? So from now on, if I ever need to cry, I'm gonna carry John Bernthal around the block.
That's acting, you know?
And I've mentioned all the stuff with Deborah, all the stuff with Karen. You know, I find that stuff really, you know, foggy, all of it. You know, and also I have to say, you know, when I read the first few scripts of season 2, I remember thinking that Elodie had a really tough job. That is not easy to have that, to be that dangerous and that elusive and that duplicitous and also sexy. That's really hard, you know. You know, you can't shy away from any of that. And I thought she nailed it, man. And she's doing it in another accent, another language. You know, French is her first language. So I thought she did spectacularly. And I really, you know, that's a hard part, and it would be awful to get that wrong. You know, so shout out to Elodie Young for that.
Awesome. Excellent. You guys having a good time? How we feeling out here? This guy is incredible. Make sure you go over to the Walk of Fame and visit him. You get your 6 inches of FaceTime there when he goes back to his table. I think we're on this side again.
Hello. I had a question about your fight training, and specifically what styles have been incorporated into it, and has it evolved from season 1 to season 2 to season 3?
So, some of you guys will remember this from yesterday. I don't know the names of what I'm doing. There are certain things that, like, with this character, there's so much stuff to learn. You know, there's so much stuff to practice on a daily basis. And, you know, I try and spend as much time as I can reading the comics, which has become interesting because I take the subway to the gym in the morning before I go to work. And in the first season, no one knew I was, so it's fine. But now there's Daredevil reading Daredevil on the comic and the subway, which is, you know, and I'm doing, you know, acting visually impaired, doing an accent, you know, remembering the lines, the physicality, all of it is so much that I let the stunt coordinator teach me the routines, but I'm not learning the individual art forms. I just know that in terms of what we talked about at the beginning of the show, that Matt has probably experimented with loads of different types of martial arts, Kung Fu, Muay Thai, Taekwondo, you name it. There's all elements in that, and it's a kind of a mishmash of whatever seems appropriate in the moment. You know, occasionally they tell me, you know, what's what. I told the guys yesterday, there's a scene in season 2 where Matt is having a kind of a sexy fight scene with Elektra in the boxing ring, and he does a few moves, and she says, Muay Thai. So I'm like, that's Muay Thai. You know, other than that, and in terms of the training, it's like, we don't have much time. The stunt team, who are amazing, they learn the sequences and they write them and they learn them over the course of the week. And then I come in the day before. I'm filming all of that at the time, so I come in the day before, sometimes on a weekend if I can, or the morning of, and I learn sections of it at a time. I'm quite lucky. I did fight training at drama school, so I can pick up 6 or 7 to 10 moves at a time, and then so we learn that, we shoot that, and then we forget it and we move into the next section. And you know, you spend 2 days doing a fight scene, and hopefully you have it. You know, and then I guess in the edit they look at it and they try and figure out if mine is good enough to use, and if not, they've got the stunt double. And Chris Brewster is a genius.
Wow. Are you spending 8 days a week filming an episode, or how long does it take?
It's 8 days an episode, but we get the weekend off.
Yeah.
5 days a week.
Okay.
You said 8 days a week.
8 days a week.
It's a long weekend, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Where are we? Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
One thing I like about this show so much is that it brings up a lot of deep moral arguments. With that being said, during season 2, the Frank Castle case is very controversial, so I wanted to know, if you were a citizen of New York during that time, whose side would you be on?
Oh man, I think that's for you, not for me.
There's a group coming.
Yeah.
You know about that, right?
I don't even know. That's a really great question. I don't even know where to begin. You know, there's a moment on the roof where Frank Castles says to Matt, you know, you just knock them out and, you know, hand them over to the authorities, and they get locked up, and a month later they're out and doing the same thing over and over again. And he's kind of right, you know. And I think Matt feels that way, you know. But there's no way that Matt Murdock can agree with how Frank, you know, with his religious background and just his moral center. There's no way that he could agree with what Frank is doing. I don't think. But I guess that's for the audience, you know. I'm obviously going to side with Matt on that.
There you go. Okay. We got a few more questions. We're doing good so far. Where are we on this side again? Beth?
Hi. So in addition to being a big fan of Daredevil, I'm also a practicing attorney who used to do some criminal defense work. And particularly in the first season, I was really impressed with how accurate the legal proceedings were, particularly your closing argument in the self-defense case. So I was just wondering, did you do any sort of, receive any sort of legal training? Were there legal advisors to your show? Anything like that?
Yeah. Again, it was one of the things, you know, there's so many things to kind of learn to play this role. I found a podcast online that was like, bluff your way into being a lawyer. So, you know, and it just basically described the fundamental legal terms and what they meant. So I listened to that, which was riveting. I sometimes put it on, before I go to bed, and it's turned out to be a fantastic sleeping pill. We have a consultant on set, so there's anything that we don't understand, she will let us know, and I went, and I didn't know this, but you can go to City Hall and you can watch a trial. So me and a buddy went and sat in on a trial, and you know, from watching movies, you think it's going to be like really exciting stuff. You know, there's some mass murderer on trial, and the jury is split. You know what I mean? And there's massive revelations every day. You know, and in fact, you know, Mrs. Smith had stepped off the bus before it got to the curb and had stepped into a pothole, and she was suing the city, and it was not very exciting.
All right, I object. Okay. Where are we? Hello.
Don't think the mic's on.
Don't be shy. Oh, I think we lost the mic, guys. Yeah, the battery.
You want to shout it?
What the what fight?
I didn't hear the question. Let's move on.
You stay right there. Stay right there.
No, I heard it.
Oh, did you?
I do not know. I would, you know, it's a great question. The question was, do I know if Bullseye will be? Look at that. See, superhuman.
Wow.
Superhuman.
You are. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
I think it was a Defender's question.
See,
right?
that was something else I practiced in the role. Come on, that was a good joke. I don't know. I think I've said this before. I think if we continue to make the show, at some point, I would love to see Bullseye. I think he's such a great character. Did any of you guys read the 50th anniversary issue of Daredevil? And in that, there was a section it was split up into 3 different sections, and they were kind of homage to the previous 50 years of Daredevil. And the middle one was a small Bendis Malieve run. And right at the end of it, Bullseye shows up in the window. I read that the other day for the first time, and I was like, that'd be really cool, you know. But I fear for certain characters' lives.
Well, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. It has been announced by Netflix. It's not a secret. Everybody knows the number of series that Netflix is introducing to our world after you and after Jennifer Jones. We're happy that Luke Cage is coming to the scene, but in terms of your cocky and arrogant arrogance that Matt/Daredevil is approaching, I'm assuming that you're going to have some sort of discussion with Luke Cage where you may get toned down a bit. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, good question. I don't know. I mean, I think that the way one of the things I loved about season 2, the way that it ended, was that, Matt kind of fails. He doesn't succeed in what he's attempting to do, and everything kind of falls apart, and he's left on a rooftop, iconically holding Elektra. So I'm presuming that and I have no idea because I haven't read any of the scripts, so I have no idea in terms of going into Defenders. But I imagine it's what that's done to him emotionally. It's how beaten down he is psychologically and emotionally that will lead him into a place where he's willing and able to accept help.
Right.
And that help will come in the form of the Defenders, I assume. I don't know I'm really excited to find out what that dynamic is going to be like. I love Jessica Jones, and I can't wait to do some scenes with Kristen Ritter because that character does not give a... I nearly finished the sentence, and then it says here, you may be on DC TV now.
Yeah.
So,
all I'm saying is don't mess with the man's girlfriend, okay?
Right. Exactly. And also, obviously I can't wait to, I think that all of that stuff will be. I really want to do that. There's a really great image from the comics with Dee Dee and Luke sitting on a wall eating cheeseburgers. You know that one?
Yeah.
I really want to get that in there somehow.
Yeah, that would be
I'm gonna say to the props guys, because if they don't write it in, I'm gonna say to the props guys, just always have a couple of really good hamburgers nearby.
Right.
So that if we can have a scene with on a wall, we can have the hamburgers. Sweet. I'll try and get that in.
Okay, guys, we're going to handle 2 more questions, okay? We're going to go for the last 2. This gentleman has someplace to go, where you guys also. So we're going to go ahead and do the last 2, and we are on... Beth, we're on your side? Okay.
Hi. I was just wondering if maybe there's ever talks of you needing to dye your hair red for the role, or any other physical transformations.
I did. Good question. At the beginning of season 1, we did a little bit of a red tint. So first of all, we went really red at the beginning of what happened is, a fan, when I got cast in the role, a fan took a photo of me from another film wearing glasses, and he made the glasses red, and he made my hair red, and he posted it on Instagram. And the showrunner saw it and emailed it to me, and I was like, let's try it. So we tried it. It didn't work. It looked really weird. And I think there's that thing where you can always tell, Matt Murdock is not someone who's spending time dyeing his hair, right? And so if you're not a natural redhead, then you can always kind of tell, I think. And so we tried a little tint, and we had it for the first couple of episodes, and you can actually see it in a couple of the outdoor scenes. In the first season, I think the feeling was it wasn't really worth it. It wasn't really working, and so we decided that was one of the things they were willing to let go of.
Sweet. Well, we're glad you're in costume. Okay. All right. Final question. Hello.
Hi again, Charlie. I was wondering, because obviously Matt and Foggy break up, they split ways at the end of the season, and I really
Break
feel
up.
like Foggy
Get a divorce.
was, yes, well, they did say it sounded like they were getting married, but,
It's a whole different show.
right, I feel like Foggy has been Matt's like grounding aspect, so how does that make you feel? How do you think that that is going to proceed?
Sorry, can you just repeat the end of that?
How do you think that's going to proceed now that they don't have each other to like?
You and Foggy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Foggy.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that with, this is going to sound a bit wacky, but Matt, in the comics, Matt and Foggy don't have any other friends. And I remember thinking that when I was reading, I was like, these guys are best friends, but they don't have anyone, they're not really friends with anyone else. There's people coming out of their lives, and you know, obviously Matt lawyers up with other people, and you know, the recent runs, he's got a different law partner and stuff like that. But in general, like, Matt and Foggy are best friends, and they're the only friends that each one of them has. And I think that's quite telling about people. If people, the kind of people you become best friends with one person, and you're able to hide in that friendship. So you're not a loner, but you're kind of two loners who've teamed up. Do you know what I mean? And I think in a weird kind of a way, the Matt-Foggy relationship is, I'm not saying there's anything fickle about it. I think they love each other a great deal. But it's almost like they're able to, it's perfect for Matt, because he's able to manipulate that relationship a little bit towards what he needs it to be in order to be Daredevil, you know? And so, I think he needs Foggy, I think Foggy needs Matt, and I think they will discover that, and they'll figure that out, and hopefully Foggy can line up a little bit about Matt being Daredevil, and see how cool it is.
I don't know. I think Matt probably needs to apologize a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think so. But I do think I think there's something in this idea that the relationship is the way that it is because they do love each other, and they've grown up together. But also it's very convenient for both of them. You know, they need each other and not just more than just in an emotional sense.
Man, that's going to be a long episode. you know, I didn't mean to do this, man. I know you didn't mean to do this.
But we did have a scene where, as in season 2, Eldon comes to the apartment and we have a fight. And when we got there, we started rehearsing it, and we read the lines the first time, and then after the first, as we were getting ready to shoot it, he was like, dude, I have got to stop bitching at you, man. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm done. I think I actually said, like, I feel like I'm done apologizing to you. And then we ended up using that line in the scene. I actually said it one time.
That's awesome. You guys have been an incredible audience.
Thanks so much for coming, guys.
So grateful to have